What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we got some information about some big audio innovations that are coming to Black Ops 6, and they actually went into quite a bit of detail here when it comes to various audio improvements that they've made for Black Ops 6. And let's just dive right into this with what they call the adaptive battlefield. Essentially what they're describing here is how sounds are going to interact with the environment, and the goal is to create a more purposeful and directional soundscape that focuses on information that players need when they need it, while reducing the clutter of extraneous noise. So an example here is for distant firing sounds. They've been really focused on improving those to give a better indication of directionality, distance, and threat level, so you can really identify what's going on with that, instead of it just being some like really generic distant gunfire that you can't even really tell the general direction that it's in sometimes. Another thing, and a big highlight of this information release, was improvements to spatial reverb, or essentially echoes, that account for the environment that you're currently in. So for example, they mentioned footsteps will echo down long hallways, the sound of rain and crickets chirping will come through open windows and holes in the wall, and they give a few examples here, and I'm just gonna play them for you guys in the video. So if you have the ability right now, I'd recommend putting some headphones on, or at least turning up your audio a little bit here. And the first thing we're gonna show is the spatial reverb when it comes to operator voice lines, like your operator's voice lines, and just pay attention to how different he sounds depending on where he's standing in the environment.
Destination marked. Head for my waypoint. Set and rally point. Head for my waypoint. Destination marked.
So while the changes there are fairly subtle, if you're really paying attention, you can definitely tell, especially with the echo or lack thereof, depending on where you're standing, it does just give that extra layer and context behind the audio. Now, much more importantly than your own operator's voice lines, let's have a look at the enemy footstep example they shared here, and how the footsteps are going to echo in like a long hallway, for instance. So in that example, you could start hearing the footsteps way before the enemy got there, and you could hear where those echoes were coming from. If you were wearing a good headset, for instance, you could actually pinpoint the fact that those footsteps were actually echoing through that hallway to the right and into the area where you're currently standing, instead of just directly hearing the exact location of those footsteps in a straight line through walls, which is what you'll often hear in video games. But let's just have one more listen to that clip with the enemy approaching. And fidelity-wise, that sounds great. That seems exactly like what it would sound like if somebody were running down a hallway with that particular surface that they're running on and in an echoey environment like that. Now, on the gameplay side of things, this definitely makes me a bit nervous. Although something that wasn't clarified yet at this point is whether or not this was active throughout the beta build of the game, or if this is something that's going to be new for the launch of the game. And in the beta, we were using a different audio system. If this is what was active in the beta, then it just seems that they've significantly boosted that footstep audio for this example, so you could hear the details even better. And if that's the case, then that's totally fine. I thought the footstep audio in the beta was actually balanced fairly well. But if that's not the case, and this is a brand new style of audio, and they've also significantly boosted the enemy footstep audio, then I have some concerns gameplay-wise for multiplayer, which I'm sure anybody that's been around my channel for a while, you know why I have these concerns. I don't think footsteps in Call of Duty should be so loud that you have several seconds to prepare for an enemy before you can even see them, just because you heard their exact location in real time, because they made the error of sprinting in a Call of Duty game. And to be clear, I'm speaking about 6v6 multiplayer, not Warzone. Warzone's a different story, and footstep audio should be a little louder and easier to track down. But in 6v6 multiplayer, if those footsteps can be heard at too great a distance, at too high of a volume that's overwhelming the gunfire that's even going on around you, then that creates a serious issue with gameplay pacing, because it discourages you from moving around the map, and it rewards you for staying stationary and listening for the people that are dumb enough to run around. Now, thankfully, at least we do have a ninja perk in Black Ops 6, so even if this is really bad, at least we have a method of countering it. But ideally, I don't want to see that become an absolute crutch, especially in respawn game modes. Of course, it'll be a crutch in Search and Destroy, that's fine. But for respawn game modes, I'd like footstep audio to be balanced to where you can hear footsteps, and if somebody sprints up behind me, you'll definitely hear them, but you don't feel the need to use something like the ninja perk in order to feel comfortable moving around the map aggressively. Honestly, I was happy with the state those footsteps were in the beta, and I'm hoping we see something comparable for launch. It's kind of hard to tell from this clip. We don't know if it's just for example's sake or what. So I'm not going to share my definitive opinion on this until we actually get our hands on the full launch build of the game and we can see what footsteps are like in a realistic scenario where there is gunfire going off. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit concerned when I saw this clip pop up today. In either case, on top of this, we also got a couple different views of how the audio itself will propagate around the map and bounce off of various surfaces. And on a technical level, this looks extremely impressive. And I think it's really cool that they're designing systems like this. I just hope that it balances nicely with the multiplayer gameplay, of course. Now, after that section, they went on to talk a bit about live mixing, so prioritizing the most important sounds, because not all sounds are able to play at the exact same time, because there's a lot of sounds that could potentially be going off at any moment, and that has to be translated into a user experience as well. So basically, they just talked about their new priority system assigns a dynamic priority number to every single sound in the game, and then that can be adjusted live within the mix. So this means that the sound of enemies moving toward you, for example, is going to be emphasized more than the sound of a teammate at your back. Or for zombies, they mentioned a zombie jumping off a building behind your operator. That'll be prioritized over other sounds due to its imminent threat. So this is actually going to be adapting in real time to play the most important sounds to you. And again, on paper at least, it sounds really impressive, and I quite like what I'm hearing about it. As for the next feature that they're bringing to Black Ops 6, and this definitely wasn't available in the beta build of the game, this is Enhanced Headphone Mode, which allows you to use HRTF, or Head-Related Transfer Function, to adapt the audio in the game to your actual physical head shape, an ear shape, for instance. And this sounds really cool as well. Again, on paper at least, we'll have to see how it actually plays out in game. But they do describe this as the gold standard for maximizing directional perception when you're listening with headphones. Now with this, they mentioned there's going to be a universal HRTF profile that was specifically created for Call of Duty. And then on top of that, optionally, players can choose to enhance this by creating their own personalized profile that takes into account their own physical attributes, such as the shape of their ear or head. And this technology will be available at launch for Black Ops 6 and at the start of Season 1 for Call of Duty Warzone. And this brings us to the final section where they're talking about audio support, and this is accessibility support for audio. And the first thing they mention here is there are going to be settings for asymmetrical hearing loss. So if you have one ear that's better than the other, you can actually balance things appropriately to account for that in game. And then on top of that, they're going to have accessibility options to adjust for tinnitus. And I'm so happy to hear that. I actually suffer from mild tinnitus, and definitely in Call of Duty, especially when you get hit by like a flash or a stun, sometimes that triggers my tinnitus really bad and my ears will be ringing for a while after that. With Black Ops 6, they're going to be providing a lot of options to make fine adjustments to the various frequencies, and also just a setting to reduce tinnitus sounds. And that's something I'm absolutely going to be playing with the moment I get my hands on the game. Now, on top of that, right at the end of this blog, they just mentioned they're also going to be adding various audio mixes to the game compared to what we had in the beta. There's going to be different Hitmarker sound effects, voice chat settings, and more coming. So overall, definitely a really interesting read. Looks like they dove really deep into the audio, and fidelity-wise at least, things are looking great. Obviously, I do have my concerns when it comes to game balance, but I can't really judge that until we get our hands on the game. And with that, this is where I'm curious to hear your thoughts on all of this in those comments down below. How are you guys feeling about that new 3D audio system that it looks like they're integrating into Black Ops 6? Do you have any concerns when it comes to footstep audio, especially after hearing that clip? And do you have any other thoughts on what they shared today? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.